Hi, I'm Colt Selleck from High House Stable Garage, and this is everything you need to know if you're looking to buy a 1980 through 1996 F-150. This video is targeted to more people that are in the Rust Belt, so that being any of the northern provinces, the lower half of Canada, the east coast of Canada, or just neglected trucks in general due to rust issues. I'll have a follow-up video for transmissions and engines. I've been dealing with these trucks now for 12 years, ever since I was a wee tot. I've had over 9 of these trucks myself in my lifetime in my name. My parents have had them, and my grandfather has had them. I've blown these trucks apart into 1,000 pieces and put them all back together. This is everything I've seen and everything I've looked out for when buying a 1980s to 1996 Ford F-150. On these trucks, there's a few spots that you have to watch out for. A big one, whenever I'm looking at a 1980 through 1996 Ford F-150, 250, or 350, it doesn't matter on these trucks, it's all going to be the same. Your front rad support. If you live in a rusty climate or the truck is from a rusty climate, you likely have seen this if you ever took notice in these trucks. It's always gone. That's just because it collects. It's a poor design by Ford. It's a pocket that collects mud, salt, and water. Anything that will rust out that point, it just collects there until it breaks right through. On these trucks, it's usually always gone or it's just about to go. So if you find one that has a good rad support in it, you're on the right track. Now, another thing that's kind of common with these trucks is your steering box where it mounts to the frame. Usually it's only a problem on half-ton trucks. Their frames are only thin frames. They're not like a 250 frame where the 250 frame is close to a 1/4 inch. Is you have all this leverage on one side of the frame where your steering box joins. Over time, it will crack around the ears of the steering box. Something that's hard to see, but later down the road, if you have any drivability problems, aka wheel shimmy or bump steer, check that. If you can't see it anywhere else, you might have a cracked frame and your box might be flexing. Drop pivot brackets, and they connect your TTB arms or your I-beam arms to your engine cross member. But what happens is when you lengthen those drop brackets, you add a ton of stress to your engine cross member on the factory bolt holes. In older trucks, especially rusty trucks, you can experience wheel shimmy, bump steer, etc., and that might be because your pivot bracket where it bolts to your engine cross member is actually cracked right there. It can also crack anywhere where there might be a flaw in that engine cross member because you're adding so much strain and so much flex through leverage because you have huge tires and a whole bunch of unsprung weight further from the vehicle. Now, as for the F-Series trucks, F100, F150, 250, and 350 from the years 1980 to 1986, basically the bullnose era to the bricknose era, what happens is on those firewalls, there's no reinforcement for a manual transmission. That being said, your clutch master cylinder that bolts on the outside of your firewall, there's no reinforcement plate there. It's simply just body sheet metal. And it all comes from that firewall flex that's down on your clutch master cylinder, and it will run all the way up past the brake booster and all the way down below. The only way to fix that is to take your clutch master cylinder off, your brake booster off, your pedal assembly off, weld the whole thing back to normal, and then Ford actually sells, it's quite a problem that Ford themselves had a recall on this exact issue, so they have a manufactured bracket. The part number they don't distribute the part number anymore, but you can find other companies that make them or download the schematics online. But it's basically just a reinforcement plate that bolts in with your pedal assembly bracket to reinforce your firewall from the flex of your clutch master cylinder. Sometimes, if you have a situation that seems like you can't get your clutch master cylinder to bleed, or it seems like every time you put it into gear, the truck struggles and it fights you all the time, and you just don't think that your clutch maybe has no more life in it, check your firewall. Your firewall can flex on those trucks quite a lot, sometimes upwards of an inch, depending on the cracks. It might just be a simple crack that's causing all those drivability issues. Now, I'm going to loop all of these ones together. Cab corners, rockers, body mounts, rear cab mounts. These trucks, they used a very minimal amount of galvanized steel. That's basically a corrosion inhibitor that's coated onto the steel, baked on, so it makes it hard for rust to form over the years. They only use these in select few places on these trucks, and especially in high wear and tear areas, that galvanized coating will wear off. So usually, if you have rockers on these trucks, or body mounts, etc., that are rotten, most likely there's other problems down the line. And then on the back of your cab, where you have two of your mounts that join your cab to your frame, there's a big cross member made of stamped thin gauge steel. That usually rots out right where the cab corners are, and it will affect the structural integrity of your cab, causing, which is my next point, it will cause your body panels to be misaligned. Now, if you're going to be doing cab corners, body mounts, now, if the body mounts are completely gone on the truck that you're looking at, another bad thing about these trucks is the frame bucket that the cab mount bolts to usually is rotten out. It won't look rotten from the sides, but once you pull out that rotten rubber body mount and replace the nice steel and replace the steel part of your cab body mount, you'll see that the hole that's only supposed to accept the body mount bushing and the bolt, usually around this big, is now about that big. So in order to fix it, you will have to get washers or anything, something like that, and you will have to weld it to 1/8 inch steel metal. Usually that's not a problem if you work in a body shop or are buying the truck as a project, because you're most likely already going to do welding. But if you're bringing it to a body shop for them to fix, it's going to cost you more money. If your truck is equipped with a saddle tank, that is one side tank, usually 19 or 16 gallons, depending on your truck, short bed or long bed. If your truck is equipped with a saddle tank, be careful. If you get underneath your truck, where the tank strap for the front of the tank joins to the frame, usually that cross member at the bottom, usually its side pieces are completely rotten, where it joins the bottom rail of your frame. If we're going to talk about frames at all and the Rust Belt, we can't look over the 1980 to 1981 Ford lightweight frame. It was offered in the F100 and I believe the F150, but it's essentially a stock F150 frame with a ton of holes drilled into it, not small ones, big hole saw type holes. This was to help with fuel economy and basically weight savings, so you could effectively tow more. It's a good frame. Its structural integrity is fine. But what happens is, in the Rust Belt, usually if you're going to look at a truck, it's either been sitting for a long time or you're buying someone else's project. If these trucks have been sitting for so long in the Rust Belt, with half of their frame already missing from the factory, that's half the frame that you're already essentially lost. It's not going to take a lot of rust to completely crack that frame. There's not a lot of meat there in the lightweight frames for in the Rust Belt. Be wary of them. If the truck you're looking at has a Swiss cheese frame, look at front to back. Anywhere where those big holes are, look at the top and bottom for cracks. You might find one. Most of these trucks were equipped with a standard bench seat, but sometimes you get lucky and you'll find a bench seat with cup holders built in, especially if you can find the ones that have the plastic cup holder that bolts to the front or that clips to the front of your bench seat. Those are a rarity. If you find a truck with those, it's a check mark for you. Good job. Another hard to find parts on these trucks, if you are looking at a truck and it happens to have, in any of the years, 1980 through 1996, if the gauge cluster has a tack, that is not a standard option. That was added on to the car customization order form when it was first built, either by the dealer or by the original first owner. The pedal assembly, most likely those plastic bushings, are long since gone. So if you get in a car and the clutch pedal squeaks every time you press the pedal in, you need bushings. If it's so far gone, when you go to replace the bushings, you might see that your eyelets now look like eggs. They have been ovaled out. The only way to repair them is to replace them. There's a nice Heim joint mod that will eliminate all your squeaks. If you're new to these trucks, basically from the 1960s all the way through 96 for the half tons and 97 for 250s, your 3/4 tons, these trucks ran twin traction beam front ends or twin I-beam front ends, depending if it was a 2-wheel drive truck or a 4-wheel drive truck. The same applies. If there is any problems with the springs, drop pivot brackets, if it has been lifted improperly or lowered improperly, you will see camber wear on your tires. If it's lifted, you will see it on the outside edge of both front steer tires. If it's been lowered, you'll see it on the inside edge of both front steer tires. Something to look out for. If you have irregular wear on those tires, you're going to have to get the truck aligned and you might have to throw parts at it. Depending on the market that you're buying your F-Series pickup, again, the oldest example from this generation of truck is 1980. Most likely, some of the interior panels on your truck that you're looking at have been damaged, removed, or have been replaced with a non-factory color. If you find a truck that has a complete unmolested interior, you're in your A game. As of my knowledge, there is no company that makes replacement interior panels, that being your door trim, your rear trim, etc. If you have all that, you're good. If you don't, it's junkyard hunting or second-hand hunting, eBay, Kijiji, etc. As for the 1980s through 1986 trucks, if you have an immaculate dash pad on that truck, that being it's not rotten out on the very top, if you can't buy the truck, buy the dash pad, because that dash pad is worth $400. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving us a like. It helps us a lot, but I hope you're more informed now for when you're going to look at your F-Series pickup. I'll see you guys in the next one.